You ready for this? All right. The statements issued by hosts, co-hosts, guests, and anyone else appearing on the show do not reflect the stance of the College of New Jersey or the NJDOE OSE. Please use your professional judgment when implementing strategies and resources within your practice. Hey listeners, this is Brian from the future. You're about to hear part 2 of our in-depth interview with Melissa Millick. If you haven't already, please go back and listen to part 1 first. You can find the link to part 1 in the description below. And so now we're going to kind of dive into your professional work, your experience, all that incredible stuff. And so you have a lot of really unique perspectives as both a teacher, the visually impaired, a TVI, and also someone who uses a lot of the vision tech yourself, right? The AT.
Yes.
Can you start by telling us a bit about your journey, what led you to this field?
Yeah, so I, well, fun fact, the person who wrote my recommendation letter for here, it took me 2 years before I could read it, but it turns that was my TVI, my old TVI. And she and I took a trip to Montenegro it was for O&M because she was my TVI and orientation mobility specialist. And my family organized like a camp for kids. I started my education journey at a school for the blind in Montenegro, and then when I came to the States, they quickly realized that I could follow along with gen ed classes. But we went back to my school for the blind, and we did a week-long like O&M camp. And I think that's where she realized, because I was 14 and I was helping her translate, but also like there were two of us and a lot of them. So like sometimes I would teach a little bit by myself too, to other kids. And she noticed that, and again, I didn't know about the letter until much later, but she definitely encouraged me when I was in college. I was like, I don't really know what I want to do. I definitely want something where I'm gonna have like a solid job. I was thinking of communications and media. I wanted to I really like, again, like art, and maybe I was like, oh, maybe I can do Photoshop or like video editing and stuff. The color grading and the color balance got me. So I said, I guess that's off the table. And so we met up for lunch. Like I always kept up with her, and she was like, "Yeah, you should apply. There's a grant. Yes, this is true. At least New York will give you your TVI certificate for free if you work within the 2 years. Oh, we need more people in the field." um, but yeah, so she very much encouraged me, and I didn't have like something that I passionately wanted else, so I said, "Okay." Um, and then, so that's sort of professionally. Again, when I got to the States is when I first got introduced to Vision Tech. Before that, I knew how to use a Perkins Braille writer, which is looks like a big old typewriter that they would use in like, the 1920s or whatever. So um I got here and they were like, here's a Braille computer. Here is a, computer that will talk to you. Here is like a beep indicator for your cup so you don't have to spill stuff. My home is now full of talking. Anybody that comes into my house, I'm like, fair warning, everything talks. The TV talks, the scale talks, the Echo talks, like just, you could talk, but I talk back to my things all the time. But it's like
What when
just
you
yeah.
were in Montenegro, had you not experienced any of the Braille and talking stuff?
No, so there was a talking watch that that
Told you the
made,
time?
yeah, it made funny noises. That's what I remember it for. And it was also in English, so a lot of stuff wasn't localized either because
Right.
it's such a small market. That, and then we were aware of screen readers, but at the time that I was there, there was nobody who knew how to teach us to use it. And when they did eventually find somebody, it was a very elderly sighted man who had like a IT background or something. But like the way he told us to type is to count from left to right, like to count keys, which is not,
Mm-hmm.
obviously not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed
Mm-mm.
to do the, 10 keys, the home row stuff. So that it wasn't very effective, nor did they, and they still don't have O&M teachers. I believe they don't still have orientation mobility instructors there. And vision teachers either. I think they have the resource center, so they have a place where there's a bunch of people who know how to make tactile graphics and who can like advise you on what to do, but there's no one that comes into the school and is like, all right, you know, did you understand that geometry lesson today? For because math and science are typically very hard because it's spatial, right? Um, so I don't think those fields even exist. Um, and so what it's really when I got here that a lot of that was introduced to me. Like same with like, using technology to do route travel, like plan how to get from point A to point B, and then incorporating that with orientation mobility to be able to like navigate the city independently. So yeah, it's really mostly here because they don't have the professional staff to know, even if the tech is like, so there's screen readers that are free that
Hmm.
come with like iPhone, they come with there's some for Windows, there's for like Android. So it's available, but if you don't have anyone to teach it, or even if they teach you the basics, it's like, all right, what am I going to do now if you don't know? So, but now I think it's a little better. They have I have some peers who, help out the little like younger generation and all that. So,
And now you're a resource to your
yes.
community in Montenegro that
Yes.
you keep in touch with and your family and stuff. So that's a really
Yep. I take that very, very, very seriously. I always like, oh, like that there's like the big conferences, the National Federation of the Blind conference, the oh gosh, AFB. I'm blanking on what
NFB.
they're NFB, ACB, sorry.
Hmm.
There's like a few of them. So I always try to like send over like, oh wow, look at all these things because people can't travel. Like some people come from out of the country, but not everyone can do that. And there's a lot of cool tech that's being developed all the time. So yeah,
for sure.
definitely sending that over.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. Kind of building off of that, you work with students with severe and multiple disabilities. How do your
Mhm.
own experiences with assistive technologies shape your approach to teaching and supporting your students?
Yeah. So that one, that's a fun time because the first year so I'm someone who kind of like approaches things very lightly, like, okay, let me see what these people are doing because I had no experience with this population prior to coming here. And so when I got here, I was kind of like, okay, this is how things work. I don't know anything. I'm just gonna like do as I see other people doing. And then I realized that like sometimes that's not like it's nobody's fault, but like there was no one who had that overlap to be like, hey, this actually doesn't make sense. And then the other thing is just thinking on how to expand switch access. So what I mean by that like is um if you are blind or severely visually impaired and you're pressing the switch, you don't have immediate access to what's happening, what the switch is doing, unless it's like an auditory thing, right? If you're making a sound go or something. But if you're making a fan blow, if you're making a squirt gun, squirt paint or whatever, right? Like if you're making a walking toy go, you can hear the sound of those things, but do you know that what kind of tracks it left behind? Like, and I try to, so something for that I say is always like introduce the item. So like if it's a walking toy, we'll take a look at it first. Maybe I'll put it in their preferred visual field and I'll make it go so that I explain like, okay, when you hit the switch, this is going to happen. And I make it, bring it to them whatever way. Because for visually impaired and blind people, you really have to bring the world to them, as with like our severe multiple population at large, but even for typically developing blind people, you really have to do that because hearing is a distance sense. That's the only thing you have. Otherwise, touch, you only touch what's there. But vision is really what it gives you. I believe it was like 60, I could be wrong on the stats, but I feel like it was something like 60%, something like that. So then like what are you missing out on there? Separate thing. But yeah, so I feel like I'm just trying I'm the voice for our kids that don't that can't use it very effectively, though we really do work a lot on advocacy. Like I said before, with the font, sometimes I'll make the lights too bright, I'll sit on the wrong side, and I'll sit there. If they tell me they want the wrong side, I'll sit there for the entire session. And if they have to strain their head to see me, then maybe next time they'll choose differently. I really want them to understand that like they have the power to change what I do. Very important. Um, so yeah, and with my voice, I prompt people around me to give a little bit more of that verbal description, like, hey, what is the toy doing? What color is the paint? Are they mixing the paint? Like, where are the stations? Like, something just happened today with painting, so a lot of my examples are painting.
Hmm.
But yeah, so again, very rambly. Feel free to direct me if if you'd like, but I think just giving that vision perspective for how do we make that meaningful? How do we keep access? And then also that dignity of like, if I don't want to, I don't want to have to be made to do it, but like
Of course, yeah.
offering like, hey, if you can't see it, maybe you need to like actually, I found so many things that I mean, maybe this is for everybody, but like kinesthetically doing something versus just watching is like so different. And I think vision wise, because you're not sure which one, I think it helps so much more to physically do something. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Good. I'm going to
So,
piggyback on a lot of what you just said. So you have this powerful belief that tech levels the playing field for people with disabilities. Was there a piece of technology, a moment that made you first realize that this was possible?
so for myself, definitely it was access to a computer because especially here living in the States, so much can be done online. Like I can book my trip, request my accommodations, check out what's the restaurants nearby, um, pre-order Starbucks on the app, which is mostly accessible. That's always the other thing is like kind of like what they were doing in the physical world. I feel like, and even still somewhere now, right? Like we need all public spaces to be accessible. Now I'm like, okay, great. Now we need the internet to be fully accessible, please and thank you. Um, and most like text-based things are like apps, like games and more fun things generally are not. So there's that, but like functional things, um, I do find. And then when I go back home, not a lot of things are digital yet. And if they are, you have to, it's a very painful and long process to
Mhm.
sign up. You have to request written notice to blah 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 that you'd had like digital access. I'm like, why are you making it so hard to go paperless? Like paperless is good for everybody. Um, so just computers and screen readers in general, for me, I think that like that has become so many things. Not personally for me, but I know a lot of people use like AI, like the meta glasses to like help them in their environment. There's services like Ira, like who have trained agents that will like, hey, I don't know, does this chicken look expired to you? And you can have like a cited per and like there's also Microsoft has a free app,
Yep.
Be My Eyes, that's volunteer based, but Ira they're trained and they have certain access to like they can, I don't know, screenshot your phone. They can like they have certain access to some things on your phone. Um they can like screenshot the camera so you don't have to like if you find a good position you don't have to have the blind person keep like finding that same position if they like move to get something and then you have to find the position all over again because they're not seeing the camera. So like all these they have all these apps that can help people be more independent, which I love to see. I don't typically need them or I'll just like FaceTime someone I know, but I think it's a great option to have. um for our students, honestly, I feel like the same, like independent book access,
Yes.
like even the jokes, like my school does a lot of jokes. Like we have a whole prank week and yeah, like they'll have like Switch adapted like fart machines and things. And it's like it seems yeah, right?
I
Like it's
love
so
that.
silly, but I think it's so meaningful for the kids
Mhm.
because how often do they have the opportunity to do something goofy and teenagery? Like, how many pranks does like your random little kid, like
Right.
your random 10-year-olds like to play? So they sometimes I'm looking at these like setups that we have and I'm like, man, you have the power link and the fan and like the ramp and the things, but like, you know what? Like I can't imagine a kid in Montenegro with similar, and like I hope they can get there or somewhere close to here, but with similar needs, having this much understanding of what it means to prank someone, to connect, to like, and sometimes I'm like, okay, maybe this device, I feel like it's mostly for social. I don't know how accurate how intentional they are, but like especially with something like TD Snap, like it's so social based where you can have a whole conversation with this kid that might like be sitting in a corner somewhere and people talk about them all the time as if they don't exist. Before I came in here, I thought all kids who are nonverbal, all people who are nonverbal, like unless you like could read and write, right? I thought that means like you're not aware of what's happening. And like that's not a great thing for me to say as a disabled person, but like I think it's important to be honest and open about not knowing, right? Like my favorite thing when someone wants to help me in the street is to say, "Hey, do you need help and how can I help you?" rather than presuming.
Mm,
Because when you admit that you don't know, then you are willing to see me as who I am and what I need. And, like, obviously, I mean, my job interview here was like, "Hey, do you have experience with this population?" "No, I'd like to learn, though. I really am excited to learn." "Okay, great, you're hired." So, like, I think that like, I'm very proud of that, and I think that advocating for tech in those ways, I think it gives our kids so many more experiences. Even maybe they're not like, writing books and doing what I'm doing in terms of like independent travel and buying their groceries, but like they're getting so many more experiences that are akin to those that their peers have. I think that's so invaluable for them to feel like, hey, I can relate to kids when they say that they read a book. I can relate to kids when they say that they pranked someone. I can relate, well,
Hmm.
whatever it is,
yes,
invaluable.
Hmm.
definitely opening up, like the like you were saying before about making things like an even playing field, using that tech to do that, for
Yes.
these individuals and not making the hill so hard and steep to climb.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's really important.
If I could share also, my school has, we do like summer, like sports day. It's like a 3-day long event just because our kids need more time. And like, that has grown so much. Like they started from having everyone in the gym and I was like, absolutely not. No person with a sensory loss can like interpret anything that's happened. And now it's quiet, the lights are dim, one or two classes per event, and they just like scatter like you do it this time, you do it this time. We have a whole AT game arcade. And again, it takes so much on the back end for us to like put it together. Things are janky, things break, but like the value that that gives to our students that they can, or even like prom, like any of these
Hmm.
things, I feel like they take so much more work, but it doesn't matter because for the kids, like they can relate in the same way that maybe like their other sibling went to the arcade or they know what a like Plinko machine is or whatever, like
Hmm.
because for them that's what they need to just do something as simple as play an arcade game is unfortunately it has to be a lot of work on our end, but it's like I only say unfortunately because like sometimes it can't happen as much as we would like, but I think we personally here we do a really good job. I think it'd be better if it was more commercially available for all this kind of stuff that we do, but like it's getting there. Like there's a lot more like toy manufacturers making Switch adapted stuff. Like things are getting better every day, and I think it just gives them so much power. As long as, of course, we do our verbal descriptions and we let them explore with their hand. Vision plug.
Yeah, and
But yeah,
providing as like a person who, has been involved in that event as well, um, providing that student with multiple means of access and multiple means to, like take in that content, like you were saying, like depending on what they need. I know
totally.
we had like a hair dryer that would blow up the balloons,
Yeah.
providing that like that input with the air and um
Hmm.
the sound as well, and
Hmm.
allowing students to, if the sound is something that bothers them, like wearing headphones or just everything is adaptable and personable to like what the student needs. So I think that's really
Yeah.
great.
I think it just gives so much dignity.
Yeah,
It's priceless.
awesome. Okay. I know you mentioned before about using technology for making art, using technology to um, create digital art and videos. Could you talk a little bit more about your experience with that, and maybe what tools you use and how they enable you to be creative in using a visual medium?
Yeah, so totally. So, I've been drawing since I was 5 years old. Um, with like, just regular things think kids would find around the house. And what I noticed as I got older is people would say, "Wow, your art, your line work is so clean. How do you do that?" And I was like, "I don't know, it just is." And then I got to college, I took an art class, and then I realized people did this thing called sketching before they committed to their final artwork. I did not have a concept of what a I mean, I know what the word means, but I didn't know how it was done because again, I can't see the other people next to me doing it because at that point the paper is too far away for me to like be able to perceive it. I get very close. I used to have a perpetual black dot on my nose in middle school because I always had black ink, so I d didn't realize that these guys were using pencils, and then you do like little short lines. That way you don't have to commit if you're drawing like I don't know, a dress, right? Like I like fashion art. So if I'm drawing a dress, you have to pull a long line from the top of the waist to the bottom, like if you're doing like a fancy ball gown or something, right? So that line is kind of hard to do straight and exact and to end and start exactly where you want it. So what people generally do is like they do little strokes and then they have the opportunity to adjust where the line goes. And then when they're happy with it, they can take a marker, draw the full line, and then delete the pencil marks. I could never see the pencil marks. So I just went in straight for the marker, and that made me want to just like go in for it. Which I think is good, and it gave me a lot of skills. But then when I got my iPad, I was like, wow, I can erase, I can make things bigger, I can color drop. I use an app called Procreate, which has recently become as accessible as an app, like a visual app can be. Like everything is voiceover and Switch compatible. They give like sounds when you're moving, like those like sliders from if you're adjusting size of something or whatever.
Hmm.
They'll
Mhm.
do like like they'll make a sound for that, and that's really helpful. Taps like when you tap something, it'll give you feedback, like a little click, so you know you hit it. Um, Again, color swatching, like because I don't see colors, what I do when I do art like that is I will like use like the color drop tool, which copies and pastes the exact color. And then I could do, because yeah, I could do black and white all the time, but sometimes I want to like portray an idea, and if an idea of like warm and happy makes, for you is like an orange sunset, then I want it to be orange because I want you to feel happy. Um, so I've used things like that for myself. Of course, there's like cool art stands and all that kind of stuff. With Apple's like general standard accessibility stuff, I've been able to use their like movie production software. I'm not too much into music, ironically enough. Um, but yeah, that and then
do
of
you
course
do you use
okay.
Final Cut Pro, or what do you use with the
I
Apple?
do. I do. I don't do it as much anymore. I feel like I've fallen off the video editing stuff. Again, it's mostly for me
Hmm.
because it bothers me that it can't be like professionally color matched. It's just, I have a little bit of a streak, but I like my own like shot composition and like music. It's like, you can make a lot of editing choices without that color stuff. So, um, yeah, I use Final Cut. It's not, ironically enough, Final Cut itself is not the best because I think it's made mostly to be visual, but I can use Zoom and I can get around. And they do have some keyboard shortcuts. I think if it was designed with visually impaired users in mind, they would have made some different choices, but it has like the basics. It's more than, some other apps that really should be accessible have. So,
Cool.
that is kind of that for me. Also, recently, this is like more of a stretch, but like now I've started sketching because I'm like, well, I want access to the ability to erase my lines too. So what I'll do is like, I'll do a little sketch, especially if it's on a large piece of paper. I'll use my magnifier app on my phone, take a picture, invert the contrast, compare it against the picture that I have on my iPad as a reference, and then I can like actually, oh, the proportions here aren't too right. And so I've actually just been doing that recently. So there's like so many ways that like if you're motivated, you could do so many things, I think. Um, Fun fact, like I helped a totally blind person assemble IKEA furniture over Zoom. So like I was able to like
That's
magnify Zoom,
impressive. That's
look at
very
the
impressive.
thing, and then describe. It's so much about narrating everything you're doing when you're working with blind people. I'm taking the thing. There should be 3 sizes of, squiggly screws. Take the middle one. What like it's so. Side note, but like it just RSI, like in general, just empowers people to do so many things. So back to my gushing over how technology is amazing. But yeah, for art, digital art, that's mostly what I do. And then of course the stuff that we do here at school is mostly like Switch based, which I touched a little on before with like the squirt gun and spin art and all that. But yeah, that's not so much my personal life as it is like here at work, but it's very cool to see. And they look really good.
That's cool.
So
Awesome.
So you're currently working on your CADIS or Certified Assistive Technology Instructional Specialist certification.
yes.
We've talked about the ATP, the Resno one, and Madison has that one. Could you explain to our audience what the difference between, or if you know it, the ATP and the CADIS, or what made you choose the CADIS one as opposed to the Resno one, or are you going to do both of them?
Yeah, I'm actually gonna do both. I have to
Okay.
have the Resna one because here where I work we have assistive technology team, like in-house one. We still do get the DOE evals, but we have our internal team and that is a requirement. But I personally think that we have a lot of very knowledgeable people, and even if I can pass the exam, I'm working on that as well. Because I'm a vision team member, I was given a little bit longer to like get it done. So I'm working on both actually.
That's
But
impressive. I know
not
from
concurrently, yeah.
having studied for it that that's a lot of a lot of your free time,
It is.
extra
But I'm
free
thinking
time.
like say, even when I pass it, hopefully, right? Like I can do it from the book, but if that's not my practice, like I don't think I'm gonna be as good. Whereas my passion really lies in the vision tech. But I think that the CADIS focuses more on like those nuances of like what kind of visual impairment, because a visual impairment is a spectrum, right? Like and like hearing is a spectrum, deaf blindness is a spectrum, like a double-sided spectrum, right? Um, and so it, preferences are obviously also very important, and all these factors. And so I think the CADIS focuses a lot more on those nuances of like, would you use NVDA or would you use narrator? NVDA for the win. JAWS is very expensive.
Yes, it is.
Yes. And I think it takes up a lot of RAM, which is like why then whatever. Okay. Staying on topic. Um, yeah, clearly I love the topic. But yeah, so that I think those are some of the major differences. There is that one seems to be focused on vision, and then the other is like focused on, I want to say everything else, but like I don't actually know. Like everything else that we do at my job here, like seating positioning, AAC, like environmental controls, that kind of stuff. And that very much is OTPT speech in my head, and very peripheral vision stuff. Um, and I think that makes sense because also on the flip side, the vision professionals, again, I think I've said this before, don't have to have a lot of experience teaching this population with all these extra tools. So like from both sides, I think I don't know why. It's very interesting to me because like some typically developing blind kids also will get like OT and PT because like if you don't see, you don't move. If you don't move, you don't work your muscles. So it's not like a inability or like lack of access to your body, I guess, or it's more of like, do you have what you need to do it safely or to understand? And speech too, like sometimes they get all the services. So I don't quite understand, but that has definitely been my experience that like maybe here I have to remind sometimes people to just like, please tell me your name. Like, hey, it's Madison, right? Like, because with so many voices, it's not about do I know you and are we friends or whatnot, but it's just about like, do I have enough information, and is there a lot of other clutter that could prevent me from being able to access your voice, the cadence of your voice, to know who you are. So again, side tangent, but I think those would be the differences, that they're kind of split down the middle for whatever odd reason.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Yeah, and from working at the same place as you, I think that was really my introduction to, hey, maybe I need to give those those auditory descriptions, things like I might not think of right off the bat, because I am someone who uses my vision to access my world, and that's not necessarily the same for everybody. So I think that's really important.
And that's a wrap on another episode of AT Talks. A huge thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in. We love making this podcast and building this community with all of you. Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. The team at the Assistive Technology Center at TCNJ is dedicated to supporting educators across New Jersey. If you were inspired by today's discussion and want to bring high-quality, free professional development to your district, Vanessa and Madison are ready to help. To learn how you can partner with the center and build capacity in your school, head over to our website. You can find all the information you need at atcenter.tcnj.edu. And while you're there, we want to hear from you. Visit the podcast tab. There you can send us a question through our Google form, or even better, leave us a voice message on SpeakPipe for us to play live on the show. Be sure to follow us on social media to stay up to date on all our latest events and resources. You can find us on Instagram and YouTube with the handle @ATCenterTCNJ. And don't forget to subscribe to AT Talks on whatever platform you're listening on right now so you never miss an episode. On behalf of Vanessa, Madison, and myself, Brian, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.